All right, in this video, I'm going to show you my favorite 3 lists from listsource.com. It's another data provider that we use. I made a video earlier about the top 3 lists that we like from directskip.com, but we also use a few other providers because they provide just different criteria that we can't get from DirectSkip. So I'm just going to break down these 3 lists that we like and exactly how you can pull them yourself. So the first thing is to go into ListSource. You can sign up with the link in the description. But if you sign up through Yellow Letters HQ, I believe, so if you Google Yellow Letters HQ in combination with ListSource, I'm sure it'll pull up. But if you pay them $97 a month through Yellow Letters HQ, then you get a discount on the pricing on ListSource. I believe it's 3 cents per record with the discount. So I just wanted to mention that, but I will show you how we pull our favorite list here. So if you go into Save Searches, you can save different criteria that you like. And first list I'm going to go over is one that we call the no filter, no data list. So for this to load, and these are some of our save searches here. I'm going to click on the no filter, no data list here. If I can find it, there it is. And in this list, the criteria is broken down on the left-hand side here, as you can see. So I'll just act like we were building this from scratch. So first things first, we would go into the geography tab. And we typically pull by the county. So I would just go to North Carolina, which is where we work. I'll just choose the first one here as an example. And then I would remove this city. And that will show you the count here up top on the left-hand side. And then next I would go to property, the property tab here, and we would go to equity percentage. And for this list, we're pulling unknown equity. So what this basically means is that the either mortgage wasn't recorded properly or the equity amount that the seller has is just unknown. And for whatever reason, this has performed very well for us. So that's the criteria we do for the equity. You can also, as you can see, pull negative equity filters here or obviously positive equity. And then next we would do the last market sale date, or sorry, sale price for this one, sale price, and we would do unknown as well. And that can mean that, again, the data wasn't recorded with the county for whatever reason, or it could be like some sort of interfamily transfer and the last market sale price is unknown because there wasn't a sale price, it was just transferred. So for whatever reason, again, in combination, these 2 filters work really well for us. So we do unknown on the sale price and unknown on the equity. And then we do property type. And these are the types on the right-hand side here that we like to pull. So townhome, multifamily, mobile home, other, vacant land, duplex, triplex, apartment, quad, and SFR means single family. So these are all the criteria that we use for this. So it's a pretty simple list to pull. And then the last thing we do is go over to the options here. And we do no preference on all 3 of these, which means no filter to us, but no preference on these 3, which just means that we're going to get both owner-occupied and absentee-owned properties. And we're also going to get trustee-owned properties and corporate-owned properties as well. And then this is very important to make sure that you select both mailing and property address complete so that your data will be clean. And then we can just click purchase. Now, when you click this, you can suppress against lists you've already bought. So if you sign up for ListSource and you start pulling lists, you don't want to pay for the same records twice, obviously. So what you can do, first things first, is you can click this checkbox, which says remove duplicate addresses. And so that took it down from 15 to about 10,500. And then we click the suppression tab here, and we can suppress this against other lists that we've pulled in that same county, for example. So if you go back 180 days, you can't go back farther than that, unfortunately, but you can go back 6 months. So let's say you pulled a list in the same county in the last 6 months, which we actually did. We would just select that list and suppress against it. And that is going to remove any of the same records. So as you can see, that cut it all the way down from 10,000 to about 2,000 records here. So that just saved us, I don't know how much money, but it saved us a bunch of money and a bunch of records that we've already paid for. So that way you don't have to pay double for skip tracing because you're just eliminating the duplicate records on the front end. And then from there, all we would do is just continue to check out, and you just plug in your payment information by the list, and then they provide you with the download so that you can download the spreadsheet with all the data, and then you can take it and send it to whatever skip trace that you like. So as you can see here, like I mentioned, I'm paying about 4 cents per record, 0.038. And that's with the discount I mentioned through Yellow Letters HQ. I'm not affiliated with that company, but for whatever reason, they are affiliated with ListSource. And if you want to use this site, it's much cheaper to go through them pay the $97 a month, and then you'll get it for cheaper per record. So if it's something that you think you're going to be using consistently, I would recommend signing up for that. But I'll go over our number 2 and number 3 list that we like to pull from here. So the next one that we like to pull is a no filter equity list. And typically we pull anywhere from 10 to 20 years in terms of the ownership amount. So I'm just going to keep all of this the same because I showed it in the first example how to change all these criterias. But for this example, this was a city, Fayetteville, North Carolina, that we work in. The equity percentage that we use is 20 to 100%. So if you go into the property tab, equity percentage, then you can do any percent you want. So for example, if we wanted 30 to 100, we could do that. Whoops, 30 to 100. We could add that. And if you add something new, just remove the old thing. But for example, we do 20 to 100%. I'm just showing this for example's sake. And then the next thing that we would do is last market sale date. And for this, the from column, we always do 1900. And then 2, we just do how many years ownership we want. For example, if I wanted 20 years ownership, I would do 2004. And I would add that because that means that the last time this property was sold was sometime between 1900 to 2004. So that means that they have owned it since 2004 or later if we're buying this data. So hopefully that makes sense. I think I just confused myself a little bit, but it's all good. And then property type, same as usual, townhome, multifamily, mobile home, other, vacant land, duplex, triplex, apartment, and we usually include quad as well. So I missed that, but these are all the property types we typically include. And then this list, it's a no filter list again, which for us means there's no preference on all 3 of these. But if you wanted to just do, like, for example, an absentee equity list, then you could just click absentee. And one cool thing that ListSource does is you can include properties with out-of-state owners only. So for example, if you wanted to include absentee owners that live outside of your target state, then you could do that only. And you could even do specific states. So if you want to get really granular, for example, like we work in North Carolina. So for example, let's say someone lived in like Washington, then that might be a highly motivated seller because they live all the way across the country. And so you could narrow it down even more here and do it by state. We typically don't do that, but it's just a cool feature that they have. And so when we do absentee owned, we typically just do both these check boxes and that's it. You can also do by owner occupied, which is just people that are living in these properties. And again, if you do no preference, then that's going to include both of those options. So this is the second list that we like. Again, it's a no filter equity list. So we do 20 to 100% equity. We do 10 to 20 years ownership, depending on how big you want your list to be. So for example, if we decreased this, I'll show you here. If we decrease the sale date to 2014, for example, which would be 10 years ownership, then we would shrink this list down. So I'll show you what that looks like. So if we did it to 2014 instead of 2004, this list gets bigger. I think I misspoke there, and then if we did from 2004, it would shrink the list down because these are people that have owned the property for 20 years or more. As you can see, that's 11,000. And then if we go back up 10 years, so I'd remove this and add this, then that goes from 11,000 up to 21,000. So that's kind of how you can narrow down or increase the list depending on what you're looking to do. And that's pretty much it for this list. So I'll go over the last list that we like to target, which is the unknown equity list. And we typically target this by absentee or owner occupied. So for this one, all we're going to do is target a county. We're going to go to equity percentage and we're going to do unknown equity again. So similar to what we did on the first list that I mentioned. And we're going to do unknown equity in combination with years of ownership. So we'll do the last market sale date in this example 20 years ago, which means that they've owned the property for 20 years or more, and the equity percentage is unknown. So this list performs well for us for whatever reason. I think it's because, again, these are properties that have unknown equity, which means they could be free and clear. They could have negative equity. They could have some equity, but for whatever reason, it wasn't recorded properly. And when you're targeting these lists with unknown equity, most people are targeting just the equity list that we just went over, number 2, which we work with that list as well, and it works well. But this unknown equity filter is sellers that are not on most people's lists because they're unknown equity. And most of the gurus and everyone preaches to just pull high equity, high equity, high equity. And like I said, we also pull that list, but when you pull both of them, then you're basically hitting most of the market, if not the whole market, because you're hitting people with equity and you're hitting people with unknown equity who aren't showing up on that list with equity. So hopefully that makes sense. But the other criteria we would use, so again, county, unknown equity, sale date. You can play around with this depending on how many records you want. So again, I'll just show an example. If you do the fewer years ownership that you do, the bigger your list is going to be, if that makes sense. So if you want to increase your list size, you would do a more recent date. So for example, if I did 2019, then that means these people have owned the property for 5 years or less. And so that list count is 13,000. But if I went all the way back to 2004, for example, that means these people have owned the property for 20 years or more, and that shrinks it down to 10,000. And then if I went back even further, like let's go back to 1999, for example, that would be 25 years. Then that shrinks it down all the way to 9,000. So not too much, but it's shrinking it down a couple thousand each time. So that's how you can kind of play around with the list and make it bigger or smaller, depending on how many records you're looking to buy. And then that's pretty much it. Again, you can just go and purchase the list, and anytime you purchase a list from ListSource, make sure you remove duplicate property addresses. That cut it down quite a bit, as you can see. And then make sure you also suppress against any list that you already bought in that county. So for this example, this is a Cumberland County list. So I would use this, suppress against it, and see what happens. And it took our count from 6,300 down to 1,700. So saved you a bunch of money and records that you've already bought. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. That's, like I said, our top 3 favorite lists that we use from ListSource. There's a bunch of other criteria you can play around with here that's different from some of the other list providers that you might find. So hopefully this is helpful for you, and hopefully you close some deals from these lists. And let me know how it goes in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. Thanks for watching.